Good morning, everybody. This is Jennifer Schaus coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us today in our webinar series. All of our webinars are recorded and complimentary. You can find our recordings on our website and also on our YouTube channel. Today's webinars, we've got quite a few. We did a bunch back-to-back yesterday, today, and then again tomorrow, so the recordings might there might be a short lag, so they possibly are going to be posted tonight, but hopefully by tomorrow. We've got about 300 plus YouTube recordings, and those obviously are all focused on government contracting. For today's session, we will not take any questions, simply to kind of keep this short and sweet. So if you do have questions for our speaker, Jim Bender, his contact information will be on the last slide. It'll have his email address and his phone number. And he's been a great partner and a good friend in the government contracting sector over the years. Quick little commercial here about us. We do provide professional services for federal contractors, primarily helping product companies, service companies, software companies with GSA schedules, and some of the other services that we provide are listed there on your screen. You can find more information on our website. If you're trying to reach government or government contractors, our newsletter, which goes out every Monday at 11 a.m., now reaches 16,300 plus subscribers. We are running a December cyber special, so send a note to the hello email address, and we can give you some pricing on that. Okay, so as I mentioned, Jim Bender is our speaker today. His background is listed here, and he is covering Pink Team reviews today. So Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm really happy to be here today to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is good proposal management, in particular, how to run a good Pink Team review. But before we talk about Pink Team reviews, let's have a look at the rainbow of review cycles in classic capture and proposal management. So there's a lot of different folks who have different philosophies about how to manage the proposal cycle. And as such, they've assigned various names to the steps in the process of developing a proposal. For our purposes, I'm going to work this within a 4-step process for developing the technical volume of a proposal. That is, you start with a proposal kickoff where you articulate the win strategy and the win themes and present a detailed outline of how the proposal is going to work. Then the next step would be to develop the first draft of that proposal, which we call the Pink Team draft, which is a complete draft of the technical volume with all the sections completed, including the tables, the figures, and the illustrations, or at least a complete description of what they're going to be so that the reviewers can understand all the parts and how they fit together. Then going from the Pink Team to the Red Team, you want to revise based on all the comments in the Pink Team. So you go from what we hope is a compelling draft to a near final winning draft of the technical volume. And then right before submission, you'd have what's called either a white glove or a gold team, which is, as the name implies, it's the final edited version of the technical volume that has been run through a copy editor and a graphic designer, and it's ready for the final checkoff by the executive sponsor or owner of the company. The Pink Team draft is the first time the team has had a look at all of the pieces together. It should be a clear and compelling story about why the funder should choose you over the other offers. Next slide, please. Next slide after that. Right. Okay. And there's a parallel process that goes on for developing the pricing volume. The color teams, the pink and the red, are just for the technical volume of the proposal. Now, before we get to a Pink Team review, I'm going to zip through what I normally cover in a half-day training on capture management. That is everything that happens before you start writing. So hold on, and if you're confused about anything, because I'm moving quickly, just shoot me an email afterwards and I'll answer your questions. So companies with high win rates will spend a great deal of time and effort on gathering market intelligence in the period before the RFP drops. This is typically called the capture phase. In this period, you'll find out what you can about the target agency, the predecessor work to the one you're bidding on, the incumbent contractor, and the other contractors in the competitive mix. They also take time to build a winning partnership strategy to respond to the known and suspected needs of the client. At the time the RFP is released, you should have a clear idea of why your team is superior to the competitors. This will be a win strategy. Based on this, you should be able to compress your win strategy into 3 to 5 statements that are provable and compelling to the evaluation teams. These are win themes. And based on everything you know about the proposal, the client needs, and the competitive environment, the proposal will write up a very detailed outline to the writing team to discuss at the kickoff meeting. This outline will delineate the key points to be made in each section, the differentiators to be cited, and perhaps even mention the past performances to cite in your section to support your claims. But the key thing here to remember is before you start writing, the proposal manager has to have a detailed outline and detail and specific guidance to the writers to make their job easy and to make all the pieces fit together. Next slide, please. So what is the goal of a pink team draft? What are we trying to accomplish? Basically, what we're trying to get to is a first draft that works, that it covers all of the RFP requirements. That is to say, it is compliant with all those shalls and the musts in the RFP. And it tells a compelling story about why your team is up to the task described. When we move from the pink team to the red team, the first draft to the second draft, we want to get from that compelling story to a winning story. So it's one thing to tell a compelling story that convinces the client a job, but it's another to tell them you can do a good job and a better job, however that's defined, than the competition. And that's a hard bar to get to, and the bar you have to get to. So it's critical that you get a compelling story in this first draft. Now, I want to talk for a minute about how to parse out the time between when the RFP drops and the submission date. At the kickoff meeting, the proposal manager will have to present the timeline for developing the proposal draft. And there's 2 schools of thoughts on how to do this timing. Next slide, please. The first strategy is based on the idea that the more time you give to the writers, the more time they will use, that people work best under a deadline. Proposal managers ascribing to this thinking will default to getting the first draft done quickly so you can spend more time on rewrites. They also may believe to figure out how to put together a coherent technical volume is to first throw everything into a document and move it into its rightful place. These are the proposal managers who lean less on a detailed and robust outline. And as you might guess, my opinion is that this is not a good strategy. It's really planning to fail. You should be able to plan out how the response is structured ahead of time, because the proposal manager should know more about the work and what's needed than anybody else. And they should be able to communicate that to the writing team, who will know how to develop a solution based on his or her guidance. So this should be communicated, figured out before the kickoff, and then communicated in that meeting to the writing team so they can write a solid draft and you get the most out of them. And truthfully, if you don't have a solid draft by the time of the pink team, you're losing opportunity for moving what I talked about from compelling to winning by the proposal submission. Because by the time you get to the second draft, you'll just be getting to compelling and not winning. Next slide, please. So strategy 2 is based on the philosophy of be prepared. Giving the writer a clear direction of what to write, and then it continues to support them through the process. Don't just give them the outline and say, I'll see you at the pink team meeting, but check in with them and make sure that they're not having troubles. You don't want to have somebody who misses deadlines, and finally turn it in. They totally missed the boat. You want to make sure you're staying in close contact to answer questions and make sure they're doing their job and moving forward. The proposal manager should set the expectations. The first draft is a complete and solid articulation of the proposal vision. Next slide, please. Now a word about who to invite as reviewers. Once you have a schedule and people are busy working away, you've got to set up the meeting, invite everybody. Of course, you want to invite all of the writing team because you want them the opportunity to see all the sections and how their section fits together. It doesn't fit with the other sections, to see the holes and the overlap so that they can understand what needs to change. But then you've got to get at least one or two outside reviewers, someone who's not involved in the writing, but with adequate knowledge of the customer and the solution, enough so that they can understand what you're writing about. You do not want to have the CEO or the executive sponsor of the proposal in at this point. If they give you pushback and they say, gee, I really want to get involved at the beginning, you just tell them, please, we really need to save your guidance and feedback for when it matters most at the red team review. And then if they still push back, you can say, well, look, I promise I'll give you a thorough summary of what happens in the meeting, including how we plan to get the proposal draft ready for your review at the red team review. Next slide, please. Now a word about review panels. A lot of proposal writers have the mistaken idea that the people on the review panel are like them. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Usually, well, always, there's somebody who's directly involved in it, and they're probably leading the evaluation committee, and that's usually the project director on the client side, who is deeply involved with this and knows everything about it and knows all of the stuff that you're deciding, you're discussing, and all your acronyms and your technical terms. But then the rest of the review panel, the agency has to fill out with somebody. Sometimes these people are not experts in what you're writing about. Sometimes they're just people who have the time. And because they have the time, that also may mean that they're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, if you know what I mean. And they really need help figuring out what your solution is and how it connects to the RFP requirements. This means when you are reviewing the proposal draft, you have to have in your mind this poor soul who was thrown on this panel just because they weren't all that busy. You have to clearly connect your copy to the RFP requirements and make it easy for them to find the appropriate section and to award the points on the score sheet. And this is a really important job for the pink team reviewers and for the writers to think about. Next slide, please. All of this means you've got to lean on a lot of formatting, bulleted lists, graphics, tables, and other tools designed to make it easier for them to follow your story. Now, once you've invited them to the meeting, how do you prepare them for the meeting? At least 24 hours before the slide, you want to make sure they have the RFP, the detailed outline, compliance matrix, detailed instructions about what to review and not review, a complete draft of the proposal, and the call agenda. And on the review form, you're going to have each section of the proposal, a place to put in comments, and then check boxes for whether it's compliant, responsive, compelling, or outstanding. What you don't want them to be reviewing here is things like proofreading and grammar. Really instruct them to stay away from that because you're still rewriting at this point. You have a copy editor who's going to do that at the end, and you don't want them to waste their time on it. You want them to spend their time on determining whether they have a complete description of the solution that lines up with the RFP, that it's easy to follow. And you might ask them for things like, well, we know can you recommend what can be cut? Can you recommend what's duplicative? Can be moved from one section to another? Can you show us where the holes are? Next slide, please. What's your agenda going to be? What are you going to do when you're running the meeting? The most important thing is to make sure you have a recorder, and that recorder is not the person who's running the meeting. Somebody has got to record everything that's discussed and everything that's decided for the benefit of being clear about what has to happen to move to the next stage, and also to document it for the people who weren't able to be in the meeting. You want to ask the reviewers things like, do we have the right past performances? Do our key personnel meet 100% of the requirements for experience, education, and certification? Can we better explain our technical solution? Do we need more graphics to illustrate what's in the text? Then how are you going to order the meeting? Some people like to go by reviewer, so you have reviewer 1, go all the way through from front to back, give all his or her comments, and reviewer 2. Others will do it by task, so we'll all do task 1, then you go reviewer 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll all do task 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Either way works. It can depend. The thing is, you want to make sure you front load with the most important content you want to cover. So if there's certain sections that need work and you want to hear everybody to talk about, you might want to go by section and cover those sections first, because people get tired by the end of the call. And if there are certain reviewers that you want to hear from who are important to hear from, you'll front load them and put them up first, because then the later reviewers on the call tend to say, oh yeah, well, this has already been covered and here are the 2 things I need to cover. Or they'll sense that people are getting frustrated and they'll cut their review short. So either one of those techniques works, either by reviewer or by section. But at some point, you're going to get through the whole document, and you want to dismiss the external reviewers so that the people who are going to be responsible for the rewrites, the writing team, can discuss what we're going to need to do and who's going to do it. Next slide, please. After the pink team, you're going to need to make sure that each action taken or not taken was documented. Not only, and especially the not taken changes, documented why you decided not to. So you can report that up to your executive sponsor and make sure he or she is comfortable with what you're doing and how the draft is going. So in summary, a good proposal process depends on good intel and a well thought through proposal strategy and a detailed outline and instructions from the proposal writing team. Team draft should have a complete and coherent articulation of your solution and why you should win that's easy for uninformed reviewers to follow. And finally, you need to make sure that you document everything decided so you don't waste your time on false starts and having disagreements about what needs to change and what doesn't. I thank you for taking the time to participate in this webinar this morning, and I send it back to you, Jennifer, for us to wrap up.
Super. Jim, as always, great information. If anybody has questions about pink team reviews or any proposal writing service needs, please contact Jim. His contact information is listed here on the screen. And thanks again for joining us today. We've got another webinar and another color review coming up at 12 o'clock, and we'll continue today through about, I think it's 2 o'clock or 2:30. So all the webinars are complimentary and recorded. We'll get the recordings out as soon as possible on our YouTube channel and on our website. Thanks again, Jim, and thanks again to all the participants.